Today's webinar is, as you guys see here, planning your retirement, 6 critical steps for a secure future. My name is Jim Davis. I'm one of the senior planners and partners here at Aspen Wealth Management. And I put this webinar together because we are very excited about a number of our clients who are knocking on the door for retirement. They're within 18, 24 months. They're a few years out from retirement. Um, and they have a lot of looming questions like, what should we do before retirement? Or they meet us for the first time and their questions are a lot of the questions we're going to address in this webinar today. So if you yourself are thinking of retiring in the next 10 years, you may feel like you're confronting quite a bit of like what ifs or unknowns. Many retirees say transitioning from saving to living off of their savings is one of the biggest challenges of retirement. But thinking through some of the most critical questions early on, like how much you'll have, how much you'll need, when do you take Social Security, how taxes affect your savings, and then putting a realistic plan in place can help take some of that pressure off. And taking steps towards a retirement you want to, while you're still working, can help you identify whatever shortfalls you may have and make adjustments before it's too late. So we're going to go over 6 things today you can do now to set yourself up for a smoother retirement when the day comes. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is spend a minute kind of talking about what I refer to oftentimes as the to and from dilemma. And if you're a client of mine on this webinar or we met before, you've probably heard me talk about this dilemma quite a bit. But retiring to something and retiring from something are 2 very distinct approaches to transitioning into retirement, each carrying its own connotations and implications. Retiring to something suggests like a proactive approach where individuals have a clear vision or plan for what they want to do in retirement. It involves pursuing a new hobby, maybe traveling, volunteering, or engaging in activities that bring fulfillment and joy. Retiring to something implies a sense of purpose and direction, where individuals that we work with in retirement, they see it as an opportunity for personal growth and exploration. It involves setting goals and actively seeking out ways to make the most of the new phases of life. On the other hand, retiring from something typically implies more of a reactive stance, where individuals primarily view their retirement as an escape or departure from their previous work or responsibilities. This could be driven by a lot of factors like job dissatisfaction, burnout, reaching a mandatory retirement age. I know we have some clients at Aspen who they're forced to retire at a certain age as pilots. Retiring from something may lack the same level of proactive planning. It may initially involve a period of adjustment. And so what we really want to help clients do is hit the former, not the latter, and as best as they can retire to something and retire with confidence. And while both approaches to retirement have their merits, retiring to something tends to be associated with greater levels of satisfaction and fulfillment. Having a sense of purpose and actively engaging in meaningful activities can contribute to overall well being and happiness in retirement. Conversely, retiring from something may lead to feelings of aimlessness or loss if individuals haven't identified new interests or pursuits by their previous work. People don't we counter this a lot. Sometimes folks who are retiring from a job, they think that they're retiring from their work, but what they're also retiring from is an activity that they've done for likely 20, 30, 40 years that's kept them socially engaged, intellectually stimulated. There's a lot of things that when they retire from a job, they don't realize until maybe 6 or 7 months go by, and they're like, oh, wow, I kind of miss my peer group and my friends and the camaraderie I felt in the workplace. Maybe they don't miss the job, but they miss the people from the job. You hear this sometimes. Not, we don't have a whole lot of ex-NFL players at Aspen, but you hear this as like, I don't miss the game, but I do miss the locker room. And I think that's a pretty common expression most of our folks experience when they retire. And so getting ahead of that and kind of retiring towards things that they enjoy is something we want to help curate for our clients if we can. So we'll go ahead and get started with step number 1. As we're mapping out your retirement, as you're mapping out retirement, you need to first figure out where you stand. Most people understand that accumulating wealth and achieving goals doesn't happen overnight. This understanding is the basic principle of how comprehensive financial planning works. It's about creating a process that helps you move closer and closer to your goal over time. And it incorporates all aspects of your finances that are unique and flexible and in kind of the form of a roadmap. A financial plan, when done well, evaluates your current financial situation, outlines your goals, and provides you with a strategic path towards your desired financial future. It encompasses various aspects such as your savings, budgeting, insurance, investments, taxes, estate planning, retirement planning, and more. It's very important to note that a financial plan goes beyond merely purchasing an investment or insurance product. While such products can support your goals, relying solely on them is not the path to financial success and security. And unlike financial products or just picking one of these, cogs on this wheel, if you will, a comprehensive plan can be adjusted to accommodate changes in your circumstances. It's a living, breathing thing. I spent the first 4 or 5 years of my career at a large firm. I'm sure a lot of you know this firm, probably have 401ks with this firm at some point or another. And my job is really investment management. My role was to always talk about the portfolio. And as I got my CFP and got more versed in planning, I realized there's a lot more to financial planning than just investments. Because every time you put money in an account, every time you take money out of account, every time you make a buy or sell transaction, you're also making a tax decision. And so to make an investment decision in light of all these other things is really important, and shouldn't be separated from these others. But to belabor the last point, financial planning, it's a dynamic, fluid process. It's not a static point in time. And so my next point here is your life is dynamic and your plan should be too. When I was a kid, I grew up here in DFW, Dallas Fort Worth, and my dad's parents lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And there was nothing more exciting to me or my sister than getting in our Chrysler Town and Country with my parents. And as we road tripped out there, I got to sit as co-pilot, and I had a bunch of these in the car. And my dad probably knew the route by the back of his hand. But it was such an honor to be able to, and I was so excited to be the co-pilot and say, hey, Dad, take this exit or take this highway and this, that, and the other, and kind of mapping out from where we were in Fort Worth to where we needed to be in Wyoming. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And for a long time, this is kind of what retirement planning looked like. You identify where you want to go, you identify where you're coming from, and you follow this straight line. But as we all know, life is messy and it's dynamic, and I think your financial plan should be too. And so when we do financial planning, the reason we want to meet with our clients so often throughout the year or on a recurring basis is because life happens. Job changes occur, tax laws change, a lot of things change. And so because your life is fluid, your plan should be too. So I think it's important before you do anything else is to get a baseline understanding of where you stand today and understand that you may have some course corrections you need to make along the way. And when you build a financial plan, the last part of finding out where you stand is stress testing your plan. If I haven't made this point strong enough, if you don't have a retirement plan yet, now is a good time to get one. I love this line from Warren Buffett. Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. If you do have a retirement plan, check it at least twice a year to make sure it still matches your needs and your goals. What you see here on the screen is a little snapshot from a planning software we use called eMoney. It allows us to think of things in terms of both cash flow, but tax situation, how your investments line up. And so things change as you age. Your retirement date may change, your expected future expenses, inflation assumptions, income sources. You know, it's a good idea to put your plan to test from time to time. At Aspen, we'd recommend at least semi-annually. So you can use a retirement calculator to see if you're saving enough, but you'll also get more of a comprehensive personalized results if you use softwares like we're talking about, and you work with a comprehensive financial planner. When you look at a financial plan, you have to do so through the myriad of all these different things. And a financial plan kind of takes all these in action and kind of stress tests them. Like, what if I move? What if I buy that second property? What if I retire early? And those are questions you'd rather have it answered and addressed well in advance of you actually putting in that 2 weeks notice and retiring. So in addition to checking your retirement plan, we also suggest reviewing your investment portfolio once or twice a year as well to make sure it makes sense for you. Things that may change as you near retirement include when you might start needing money, your risk tolerance, your desired asset allocation, how diversified your investments are, and your approach to regularly rebalancing your investments. The next step before retirement, a lot of times, we jokingly say the kids get off the payroll. Maybe you're done paying for college. And so it's a small window of time when you can actually boost your savings if needed. Let's say you do your financial plan and there's a delta or a shortfall and we need to play catch up. Now is the time when you hopefully can be able to do so. So whether you're in catch up mode or you just want to save as much as you can, you got some options. Prioritizing contributions to your employer sponsored accounts like 401ks, 403bs, or thrift savings plan up to the matching limit and even exceeding it if feasible. So in 2024, you can kind of see the numbers here. An individual can put away $23,000 and an additional $7,500 if they're over the age of 50. I mean, that's $30,500 they could sock away. And once your employer account's funded, or if you lack one, consider maxing out something like an IRA. And remember, if you have an IRA, catch-up contributions apply to those as well, starting at age 50. And then what about Medicare? Medicare is down the road. So what do we do there? It may be an opportune time for you to kind of start pre-funding your Medicare expenses or health-related expenses in a health savings account. There's catch-up contributions and new maximums there as well. Catch-up contributions with those accounts start at age 55 and go onwards. And lastly, this isn't on the screen, but we'll get to taxes here in a little bit. Never overlook the option to just save in a regular brokerage account where there are no contribution limits, but there's also no restrictions on when you can withdraw your money. A brokerage account to us is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You can do a whole lot of things with it. But sometimes people get so focused on maxing out their 401ks or maxing out this, that, or the other, they forget that one of the best tools you can have in your portfolio is a taxable brokerage account. Step 3, planning for Social Security. So step 1, we've identified kind of where we're at. Step 2, we've identified, hey, maybe there's a shortfall. Maybe we need to sock away a little bit more money before we retire. Step 3 is getting a plan in place for your Social Security benefits. And although you can begin receiving Social Security benefits as early as age 62, doing so results in a reduction of your retirement benefit, more likely in perpetuity. So waiting to claim benefits can lead to an increase in your future benefit. Once you reach full retirement age, your Social Security income grows by 8% each year you delay until you turn 70. However, after age 70, there's no further increase by delaying. So this is a question we get a lot, like when should I take it? When is the best opportune time for my wife and I to take Social Security? And the decision of when to claim Social Security hinges on a lot of factors, such as your other income sources, your life expectancy, your spouse's needs. And while there's no universal right age for everyone, it's generally advisable to wait until full retirement age or even 70, especially if you're in good health and financially able to defer, as delaying can result in higher incomes over an extended period of time. With this common question at Aspen, when's the right time to take it? Like any good politician, our answer should almost always be, well, it depends. However, our philosophy as a whole tends to be that we want folks to get as much out of the system as possible. And this often means looking at how much can we extract or squeeze out of the system over their lifespan. It involves playing God quite a bit. To be candid, the Social Security math is relatively simple insofar as you have to put an end date out there. So what you see here on the screen is an actual client at Aspen Wealth Management, a spouse and a married couple. And what we did was we ran it kind of through a scenario and said, when is the break-even point? Like what's the best approach to taking Social Security? Do we both take it at full retirement age? Do we both collect at 70? And what we often find is there's some kind of hybrid approach where one spouse can take theirs early at a reduced benefit. They kick the can down the road. They get 5 years worth of Social Security benefits. And then they flip it their full retirement age to taking half of their spousal while the other waits until their full retirement. I mean, there's so many different ways you can take Social Security. And so if you have to model out playing God a little bit, but it's not uncommon for us to find thousands and thousands of dollars and potential income over the years if we can be a little more creative than just waiting until 67 or the standard wait until 70. The natural break even between waiting for like an individual filing, don't just to make it clean and simple. If one person takes it at 67 and that same person takes it at 70, the natural break even point for them to catch up is normally like in their early 80s. An example there is, let's just say hypothetically, if you take it at 67, you're getting $3,000 a month. And if you take it at 70, you get $4,000 a month. Okay, so we're talking a $12,000 a year, increase if we just wait a few years. But what people fail to consider is we have a 3-year head start of money we pulled out of the system. So we've got 36,000 a year for 3 years potentially, and that's kind of your head start of what you've extracted from the system. And so it's planning like that that often finds clients going, wow, I could actually make a lot more money if I took it at this age versus that. It just depends on your financial plan. The next step to consider is tax planning. Consider tax smart strategies. Well, when you're actively saving for retirement, it's crucial to anticipate the taxes you'll face once you reach that milestone. Although tax laws and rates may evolve over time, you can still strategize and position yourself for a more tax efficient outcome down the road. One strategy involves diversifying your savings across various accounts with different tax treatments. For instance, you might allocate funds to a pre-tax 401k or an after-tax Roth IRA, a tax advantage health savings account, and a standard taxable brokerage account like we talked about. By implementing this tax diversification strategy, you gain flexibility in managing your taxable income through withdrawals from different accounts. You often hear this is called buckets. I've got a pre-tax bucket, a Roth bucket, a taxable bucket. And so it's very important to consider your tax bracket when implementing tax diversification strategies and giving yourself different buckets to pull from later in life. One expression we use sometimes is we meet folks who are 401k rich. They've got, $100,000 in cash or a few hundred grand in cash, and they've got $2 million in a pre-tax 401k. And that's great. I mean, to us, 401ks are kind of get rich slow schemes. You can only put so much in a year, year over year over year. So when I meet a client who has a few million in a 401k or an IRA, that tells me they are disciplined, patient investors, and they've done a great job. The problem is, if all your money is tied up in a pre-tax account and life happens in retirement, or you want to buy that new house, or you want to go on that big trip, or you want to buy a new car, any expense that's not covered by Social Security is likely going to have a tax bill associated with it. And so we love nothing more than as clients get closer to retirement, they've got options. They've got pre-tax money, they've got Roth money, or if they don't have Roth money, they're retiring in their early 60s. And we say, hey, we've got 10 years essentially to do potentially some Roth conversions to fill up that bucket that we can use down the road. Maybe they've got a brokerage account where you can do things like tax loss harvesting. And then you got cash. I mean, having options, everyone knows this next slide I'm going to get to, asset allocation, stocks and bonds, but what's just as beneficial to folks is having diversified tax buckets leading up to retirement. And so if you know retirement's on the horizon in the next couple of years, sometimes that means trimming down your 401k contributions, getting the company match, and just socking money away in a brokerage account to just give you some flexibility as you get closer to retirement. That may sound counterintuitive coming from a financial planner, but it's not something that's uncommon in what we experience. So the next step with tax smart strategies is understanding the difference between asset allocation and asset location positioning. This is I think a lot of folks understand asset allocation. That's just stocks, bonds, the type of accounts you own. So asset allocation involves determining the right mix of assets like stocks and bonds and cash in your investment portfolio to balance risk and return. For example, a conservative investor might allocate a larger portion of their portfolio to bonds, which are generally which are generally less volatile than stocks, while a more aggressive investor might favor stocks for higher growth potential. Asset location is very different. Asset location, on the other hand, is about placing specific assets or asset classes in different types of accounts to optimize tax efficiency. For instance, high growth assets like stocks, which could generate more taxable income or capital gains, could be placed in tax advantage accounts like Roth IRAs, where earnings grow tax free. Meanwhile, assets that generate income and have lower expected returns like bonds might best be placed in a tax deferred account like an IRA or a 401k. Knowing the difference is crucial before retirement because it helps clients maximize their after-tax returns and manage their tax liabilities. By strategically placing assets in tax-efficient accounts, retirees can minimize taxes in retirement, preserving more wealth. Understanding these concepts also aids in making informed decisions about portfolio adjustments and withdrawals during retirement, and it ensures a more balanced approach to taxes in their investment strategy. Overall, integrating both asset allocation and asset location strategies contributes to a more financially secure and tax-efficient retirement income plan. And so we're going to go all the way back to another slide. When we save for retirement, are we making a retirement decision, investment decision, a tax decision? I would argue we're making all of them simultaneously. So it's very important that as you think about retirement planning, specifically retirement income planning, you understand those buckets, the benefits of having. And so I will say this really quickly. A lot of people, in my experience, I've been doing this for a decade now. Like they tend to love one account type more than the other. They're very pro Roth or they're pro this. All tax types are good: tax-free, tax-deferred, taxable. So there's no sense in, shaming one or loving the other. What you want to do is identify the benefits of each and play to the strengths of each. And so what that often means is, in our opinion, a Roth IRA should look, from an asset allocation standpoint, should look very different than a pre-tax IRA. And that account should look very different than a taxable brokerage account, a non-retirement, account that can kick off dividends and capital gains. One of my clients, the way we look at assets at Aspen is we look at a household. Like, this household's got $2 million, but the husband has $400,000 in a Roth IRA, and or a wife does, and the husband's got all pre-tax money. And we had a plan update recently, and my client was looking over their returns and how their portfolios were structured. He goes, "I don't get it, Jim. My wife's account's, she had a Roth IRA. He goes, my wife's account's kicking my butt." Like, well, yeah, because hers looks totally different than your pre-tax IRA. As a household, we have you exactly where we want you to be in a 60-40 or 70-30 type portfolio. But how we get there is by maximizing the benefits of each tax type versus having a Roth IRA that looks different than this household's pre-tax account, and that account looks very different than their brokerage account. But overall, we're playing to the strengths of the asset location positioning in their portfolio. The next step is protecting your family. So at step one, we've identified where we are coming from. Step two, we talked about if we need to catch up or boosting our savings. Step three, we've established a plan for Social Security. Step four, we're really leading up to retirement, going to focus and lean into tax planning and tax strategy. Step five, make sure your family's protected. And there's no greater place to start than having an estate plan put in place. Okay. Ensuring your estate plan aligns with your long-term financial goals is crucial, regardless of the size of your estate. I don't care if you have $200,000 or $2 million or $20 million. Everyone needs an estate plan. Okay. Because not having an estate plan, to be candid, is still an estate plan. You're just allowing the courts to decide where things are going to go or how things are going to be distributed or who gets custody rather than yourself. So a lack of a plan with estate planning is still a plan. Here's what an estate plan should include: an advance directive. An advance directive is often called like a living will and a healthcare proxy. The living will articulates your healthcare preferences. So if you are incapacitated, whether you wish to receive like life-sustaining treatment. For example, you may also have preferences regarding resuscitation, life support, organ donation. A healthcare proxy designates someone you trust to make medical decisions on your behalf if you're unable to do so. This could be a family member or a close friend who understands your wishes and will ensure they're respected. Next, powers of attorney. These are vital. These are legal documents that grant authority to individuals of your choosing to manage financial matters on your behalf, ensuring your affairs are handled according to your wishes. If you become incapacitated or are unable to do so. For instance, your chosen agent can pay bills, manage investments, handle other financial transactions on your behalf. Another option is a medical power of attorney. They may be able to make decisions on your behalf that you want. Candidly, my wife is my medical power of attorney. Should something happen to me, I want her to be able to have the power to make a decision, and no red tape be involved. The next is a will. A will serves as a cornerstone of your estate plan. And if you are on this webinar and you have minor children, or you have a child, let's say you're a grandparent, you've got a kid who has minor children, please, 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 I cannot stress this enough. Get an estate plan put in place, because guardianship provisions are what reside inside of a will, and that's so important to have. The last thing you ever want in the event of something happening is the courts deciding who gets custody of a child. A will serves as a cornerstone of your estate plan. It directs the distribution of your assets upon your passing. It outlines who receives what from your estate, unless assets have like designated beneficiaries or are held jointly. So, for example, you may specify that certain assets, such as like heirlooms or real estate, are passed down to specific individuals or charitable organizations. And without a will, state laws known as intestacy laws will dictate how your assets are distributed, which may not align with your wishes. Additionally, consider establishing trust to achieve specific objectives such as asset distribution control, privacy, and potentially tax minimization. Trust can be a great tool and a structured framework for managing and distributing assets according to your preferences, offering flexibility and protection for your beneficiaries. For instance, a revocable living trust allows you to retain control of your assets during your lifetime while avoiding probate and providing for the seamless transfer of assets to your beneficiaries upon your passing. To put it plainly, a will distributes assets after death through probate, while a trust allows for flexible asset management both during and after your lifetime. It can also help you avoid probate and offer some privacy. And this is really important, especially again, if you have minor children. Candidly, I have three boys, and I know myself at 18, and I don't think I'd want, if something happened to me and my wife, I don't know if I want our three boys having unfettered access to money at 18. They would probably have a great time, but it would be short-lived they'd burn through it. And so, I mean, I'm very, very open and vulnerable here, but we have provisions in place to make sure that, they wouldn't get money at 18. It would be kicked down the road for another day when we felt they were more responsible or ready to receive those assets or insurance policies or what have you. Regularly reviewing these elements to ensure they align with your directives and goals is so important. Verify that your will, your asset titles, and beneficiary designations are consistent and up to date. Additionally, understand the hierarchy for asset distribution based on titles and beneficiary designations. By taking a comprehensive approach to estate planning, you can ensure that your wishes are carried out and provide peace of mind for yourself and your loved ones. The last part of step 5 is with protecting your family is insurance. Protecting your retirement savings from unexpected health costs and emergencies requires the right insurance coverages. Before I kind of get in the weeds here, I mean, we just had a client the other day who needed some dental work done. That's 20-something thousand dollars out of their account. It's not cheap. And so it's very important as you plan for retirement that health is one of the ones we talk about the most. With Medicare, Medicare offers various options, so take the time to understand them. But if you retire before turning 65, you're going to need coverage until you become eligible. If you continue working past 65, maybe you stay on your employer's plan, and that's the best option. This can be a major factor in retirement planning, as its cost on average a little over $12,000 per year for an individual. So if you're married and you retire pre-65, we're talking $24,000 for a couple to pick up health insurance before those Medicare 65 age. And about half of that, about $6,500 a year per individual once Medicare goes into effect, when you factor in, Part B and Medigap and all those different policies. Long-term care insurance, while Medicare covers some health expenses, it doesn't include long-term care costs such as assisted living or nursing home care. Long-term care insurance can be costly, but is worth considering if you have assets to protect and prefer not to self-fund these expenses. Alternatively, long-term care is not cheap. If any of you have gotten quotes and you're over the age of 50 or 55, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And so, what a lot of individuals are doing, depending on their situation, is exploring the use of potentially a home equity line of credit or a HELOC as kind of a quasi long term care policy should something happen to them later in life. Liability insurance. An umbrella policy provides additional liability coverage for your home and auto policies. This extra protection is crucial in case of lawsuits, ensuring your assets are shielded from potential financial risks. One low-hanging fruit here is taking a look at your deductibles. In the last few months at Aspen, we've come across probably half a dozen financial plans where the client was nearing retirement, they have a few $1 million socked away, and they still have a $500 deductible on their auto policies. By increasing that to a few $1,000s or an amount they feel comfortable with, it saved these clients hundreds, if not thousands, in premiums. And that's just money back in your pocket that you can spend on yourself or your loved ones. Lastly, life insurance. For folks who are knocking on the door of retirement, you're a few years out, life insurance may not be necessary. So it's important to evaluate whether it's necessary based on your retirement plan and your financial situation. All things are going to point back to that financial plan diagram I showed you earlier. And while it may not be needed if you have adequate savings, it can still be valuable. You know, if you got 2 or 3 years left on a 20-year term policy and it's a few $100s a year, and something were to happen, I'm sure your spouse would much appreciate spending the few $100. But going out and buying new policies may not always be advantageous. It just depends on your financial plan. Step 6. This is so important. Start thinking about your income. People ask us all the time. I met with a couple the other day, and it's not uncommon for us to meet with folks. And I personally, as a financial planner, don't even like to use the term budgeting because if you gotten to the point where you have enough money to retire, you're probably good at managing your cash flow. But if you're like most of our clients, you've made a good income for a number of years, and you don't really have to budget. You spend less than you make. But it's so important before you step into retirement, you actually know what that monthly burn rate is. So you can determine if you have the assets or income sources to support that burn rate and that monthly cash flow. And cash flow is a lot of other things, right? So even if retirement is still a few years away, it's really wise to begin considering the steps you'll take once you start relying on your savings. Many investors are caught off guard when they realize they lack a plan for converting their savings into a lasting retirement income. Transitioning from saving to using your savings is crucial. At least 1 or 2 years before retirement, you need to do three things. You need to understand your retirement income sources. What's coming in? Are they retirement, bank, and brokerage accounts? Are they other income streams like Social Security, pensions, annuities, HSA funds? You need to know the amount from each source, when they start, when the penalty-free withdrawal period starts, and most importantly, how they are taxed. Number 2, review your expenses carefully, covering necessities like food, housing, and healthcare, as well as discretionary spending like travel and entertainment. Maybe you buy a car every couple years in retirement. Maybe you want to pay for a child's wedding. These are all cash flow. These are all, I mean, they're expenses, but when no salary is coming in, they're going to come from somewhere, and it's your balance sheet. Once you know what's coming in, once you know what's going out, you can develop a retirement income plan. And this is a comprehensive strategy that kind of matches spending with investment management, with accessing funds when needed, so you can stay on track over time. Consider seeking assistance from a financial advisor and a tax professional to help optimize your approach. For most folks nearing retirement, it often makes sense to gradually reduce their investment risk and increase allocations to cash or bonds for funds that you may need in the near future. So a practical example of this is so you're saying, okay, Jim, I get it. I need to know what's coming in. I need to know what's going out. That's not exactly rocket science. But whether we're meeting with someone who is incredibly sophisticated, like an engineer, physician, or people who are, a lot of you are very successful professionals. You know how to run a budget. You know how to run a P&L. I don't need to tell you to do that. But when you look at this pile of assets that you've spent 40 years accumulating, I would argue, and I stand by this because I know firsthand from a number of you on this webinar, you probably haven't withdrawn from your portfolio, seldom at all, over the last 20, 30, 40 years. Maybe every once in a while for a big purchase like a house or what have you, but most of us have spent our entire lives accumulating assets. It takes a very different muscle and discipline to decumulate assets. And if we put the keys in your hand, a lot of folks, they just don't withdraw money. They have this like guilty disposition. It's a psychological barrier of like, hey, actually pulling money out of my account, it gives me guilt and anxiety and it hurts. And so what we suggest at Aspen is to automate it. So as a practical example of what we do for clients at Aspen who are retired is we don't give them the choice. We figure out that delta of what their income sources are and what their expenses are, and we push money to them on a recurring basis. Maybe for folks it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, but if a client hypothetically likes to have $100,000 in their checking account at all times, and their monthly burn rate's $10,000, every month that checking is going to go from 100 to 90. And it's our job at Aspen to push out $10,000 a month to them through a combination of pre-tax, Roth, and taxable or brokerage account sources. So that way they feel like they still have a salary coming in. They feel comfortable with their emergency fund always floating around that, let's just say it's $100,000 mark. But we also know that when we push it out to them, we're doing so in light of tax laws and their tax situation and events that are on the horizon for them. So we can generate the most tax efficient income sources possible, which is a very natural segue to this next slide. When you think about your income, and you shift from accumulating to decumulating your assets, you need to think about it in a personalized kind of dynamic approach. There are some kind of traditional strategies where it's like, hey, we start by depleting all of our brokerage account, then we move pre-tax, then we move Roth. But practically speaking, for a lot of our clients at Aspen, every month we're sending them money from their pre-tax sources, like traditional IRAs, and their brokerage account, their taxable account, which you see in green there. Because when you do so and you kind of bleed that pre-tax account down, what you're also going to do is you're going to push down RMDs that are going to be owed later in life. And so every month, let's say that client who does need 10,000, we may have 5,000 or 6,000 coming from an IRA. That's going to keep them under a certain marginal tax rate. And any needs above that, we pull from their brokerage account. But let's say in the fall or the winter, Christmas is coming up and they want to buy their grandkids a trip or a cruise or something. Well, hey, we got this Roth bucket. We can pull as much as we want from there, and all the assets we pull from there are tax free. And so you get client A who's pulling $120,000 out of their portfolio, and client B who's pulling 120. With client A, it's all IRA money, so the IRS very much knows they're going to be taxed on 120,000. But client B, because they've used a combination of different sources, the IRS may think, hey, they only make 70,000 or 80,000. And that's just more money you get to keep in your pocket unless you get to send to the government. So in retirement, having a flexible, tax-efficient withdrawal plan is key to making the most of your finances over time. By pulling income from different types of taxed accounts strategically, you can minimize your tax bill and preserve more of your savings. A smart withdrawal strategy allows you to adapt your income sources as tax laws and market conditions and your own situation changes. This approach ensures you maintain financial flexibility and get the most of out of your retirement funds. By managing your withdrawals wisely, you can stretch your retirement income further and enhance your financial stability in the long run. So I know this presentation was supposed to be, 6 slides, but one of the things that we find, and I want to talk about here, as you make this transition, please, please, please treat yourselves. We want you to enjoy your money. We want you to spend it. It is meant to be spent. It's meant to be dispersed. It's meant to be enjoyed. You've worked so hard for so long. We want to help our clients find that connective tissue between their money and what's meaningful in their life. Money is simply a tool. And folks, if you're listening to this webinar or you're watching this on YouTube down the road, I have met too many miserable millionaires in my life who will die with more money than they ever dreamed of, but empty photo albums. They don't take the trips. They don't do this, that, or the other. And everyone's got their reasons, but I would encourage you and I would press upon you, enjoy retirement. It's something to transition into, not away from, and it's something to be excited about. And so in our experience, candidly, Retirement unfolds into normally three distinct phases: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. So picture the go-go phase as a retirement equivalent of like a kid in a candy store. They're newly retired individuals. You're diving headfirst into a whirlwind of adventure. You're traveling. You're taking that Viking cruise or going to far-flung destinations. You're picking up new hobbies. You're probably a pickleballer at this point. And you are living life with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered, they never have to set an alarm again. I asked a client one time, like, what's the best part of being retired? And he goes, well, I go to bed when I'm tired and I wake up when I'm rested. I always liked that line. Um, but then we age. And as retirement progresses into the slow go phase, it's like trading in the roller coaster for a leisurely stroll through a park. Travel may still be on your agenda, but now it's more about savoring the sights and sounds, occasionally pausing for a nap under a tree. But things are clearly slowing down. We jokingly say in the go-go phase, we go to Paris, France, and in the slow-go phase, we may take a trip to Paris, Texas. And finally, this is something that we see. Um, it's the no-go phase, and this is when just the hips and knees trips are kind of gone. The bags have gotten kind of heavy, and this is retirement's version of a cozy night in with a book and a cup of tea. And while jet-setting adventures may be fewer and farther between, there's still plenty of joy to be found in simpler pleasures like, spending time with your loved ones, going feeding ducks at a local pond or perfecting your shuffleboard technique at a local community. There's beauty in all three phases of retirement. So this isn't to praise one and demonize the other. But what we find is some people they put off those trips to save an extra chunk of change, or they have some stock options if they just work for 3 more years. And before they know it, when they actually go to retire, their starting point is the slow go phase. And they've missed out on the pleasures that they could have experienced while they were younger. So whether you're in the go-go phase or the slow go phase or the no-go phase, we encourage you and implore you to embrace the journey, enjoy the ride, and remember that retirement is what you make of it. So why not make it something worth remembering? And that covers our presentation today. And I sincerely appreciate all of you who stuck around the webinar and are watching this online at a later date. I know we've had some questions come through. My interface, I can't really see them pop up, but I'll let Ella kind of take the reins there.
Okay, so we did get a few questions through email by a few of the attendees before today's webinar. And so some of those include, how can I manage taxes on my retirement income? Well, the shorter answer is just year by year. We love tax planning here at Aspen because while the markets are a moving target, tax codes are fixed. I don't know if you had anything to add on to that, Jim.
No, that's exactly right. Not many folks say they love tax planning. We're very intentional about differentiating between tax planning and tax preparation. Tax preparations, it's pretty simple. It's you upload documents and transactions from the prior year. Tax planning and strategy is forward looking. And so it's kind of that asset allocation, asset location piece. It's Roth conversions. It's all those things. But like Ella said, we know markets go up over time, but they are fluid and they're volatile. But on January 1 of every year, we know exactly what the rules of the game are. And that's why we love tax planning, is because when you know the rules, you can manipulate the rules to where they work in your favor. And you can be aggressive with like tax planning strategies and things like that.
Another question that we got was, should I adjust my investment strategy as I near retirement? Another short answer for that is yes. There is a difference between a get-rich portfolio versus a stay-rich portfolio. And on top of that, I mean, there's a big difference between risk capacity and risk tolerance. And while there might be periods of time where those align, those do adjust as you near retirement. And so, just because your risk tolerance is up here, that doesn't mean that your risk capacity is. And so, short answer for that is yes, you probably should adjust your investment strategy as you near retirement. I don't know if you had anything to add, Jim.
No, that is perfect. That's
Okay.
exactly right. We I heard one client, sorry, one mentor say one time, he goes, getting wealthy is pretty simple. If you spend less than you make and you're smart with the difference, you'll probably do well over time. But accumulating assets and decumulating assets are very different things. And the last thing we'd ever want is for someone to be, let's say, all in on stocks. And then when they will need to make that car purchase, or they need to fix the air conditioning unit, or get a new roof, or this, that, or the other, the markets are down because markets go down sometimes. And we would hate for a client to have to forcibly sell stocks in a down market to fund their lifestyle expenses. And so what we want to have is just enough of a buffer in a client's portfolio and, like alternative assets or, fixed income sources like bonds. So that way, regardless of market conditions, they don't have to adjust their lifestyle in the slightest. So that's very important.
Okay, and the final question that we got through email was, should I carry a mortgage in retirement or pay it off before I retire? And as always, that depends. There's a lot of different factors that you look at in regards to carrying out a mortgage in retirement. I'm sure Jim can go a little bit more in depth, but yeah.
Yeah, it in this day and age, where mortgage rates are 6 to 7%, probably makes sense to pay it off as much as you can. But many of our clients are sitting on, refinanced mortgages that are at sub twos, 2.5, 2.6% interest rate mortgages. And I mean, you can make an argument that if a money market, which is essentially cash, is paying 5%, it would be more prudent to keep your money in the market because it's growing at a much higher clip than what interest you're paying. But there's also something so psychologically beneficial about being debt free heading into retirement. I think there's pros and cons to both. The mathematical answer is to say, well, if your portfolio is making X and your mortgage is lower that at Y, you should keep your money invested or in something that's making more money for you. But there's also just that huge relief and weight off client shoulders of being, you know what, it's nice to be debt free. And if it works within your financial plan, it works with us. We just want our clients to be able to live their lives with confidence in retirement. And so I get that question all the time. And as always, it depends. And so I can tell you there's a mathematical answer, but there's a psychological answer too. And I don't think one should always outweigh the other.
And that kind of wraps up our questions from the emails.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for attending today. I appreciate y'all very much. Let me see here. I saw some comments. Okay, so it's focus related things. So thank you for joining. This will be available. Let me see here. There's a Q&A thing as well. One more question that might have popped up. Yeah, Stephen posted, are essential expenses already put to our long-term plan? Yes, essential expenses in every plan that we built at Aspen Wealth Management are covered. So we shift expenses around when we do cash flow planning between things that are like mortgage related, so liabilities because they have like amortization schedules versus living expenses, travel expenses, recurring purchases of like cars and such. But if you've had a financial plan done at Aspen Wealth Management, essential expenses are very much covered. And not only are they covered, but we have various inflation assumptions tied to things like core inflation for all essential expenses. We reset every July based on essentially the data from the Great Depression to July's CPI index. And so right now we have all of our inflation assumptions at 2.9%. Medical inflation, we grow at a different rate. And then education has its own inflation rate. Like we're very cognizant of inflation. And so not only are they fixed in your plan, but we've adjusted them for inflation going forward. And so that's very important for us to have baked in there. Hope that answers your question, Stephen. And guys, you have our emails. I just put them on the screen. Please don't hesitate to shoot me an email after this at any point in time. Or if you're watching this online, you can circle back and send us an email. We thank you for taking an hour out of your day or an hour whenever you're watching this. It means a lot to us. And we hope this was a great one for you guys and one that you can reflect back on and ask questions about. I wish you all the best. And thank you again for taking the time today.